Chapter 26, The Tortilla Factory, April-May 2001. An ill wind blew through Chinatown. Chuka was posted up behind the tortilla factory when Boxer pulled up in his black Camry, the one with those slim, shiny wheels that looked expensive. Boxer was part of Mondo's new crew and was his immediate supervisor. What happened in Chinatown was Boxer's business. Chuka was the eyes and ears of Chinatown. She was clean now, on the methadone program, but she needed cash and she could always get work from the familia. Her job was to pick up dope from Stalker and deliver it to this white kid who sold behind the tortilla factory where Little Mondo worked. Chuka liked Mondo and over the years had watched Little Mondo grow up. He was only a few years younger than her own son. Chuka had been around the NF all her life and was a keen student of the gang's changes through the years. She had a Raza eagle tattooed on the right side of her neck, and she sold drugs for copas and pelon back in the day. Several of her exes were NF, and way back in the 1980s, she stole and stashed guns for the gang. After she was arrested for that activity, she delivered NF messages inside the Bakersfield jail by feeding kites down the toilet to the tier below. The woman had been a real beauty in her time, and despite the ravages of a rough life, her face still managed to convey an aura of regality. She was much heavier now, older, struggling with addiction, but she always made the effort to put on jewelry, paint her lips a deep red, and make up her large brown eyes to great effect. The brows arched with an elegance even the years and tribulations could not erase. Boxer told Chuka he was looking for a man named Raymond Sanchez. He didn't want the guy selling there anymore, he said. Chinatown belonged to the NF. Boxer took off, but Chuka stuck around. A little while later, Raymond Sanchez walked up. Word had traveled fast. Raymond said he heard Boxer was mouthing off about how he couldn't sell there no more. Raymond told Chuka this had been his spot for years and nobody was going to take it from him. If Boxer was any kind of man, he'd be saying this to Raymond's face, not telling other people. In the days that followed, Chuka saw more dealers on the streets and tracks, and she knew they weren't NF. That dropout Raymond Sanchez had put them there. Mondo hung back in the night, waiting for his clients behind the tortilla factory. He saw no sign of this Raymond fool, so he simply kept on with his business. Everything bothered him lately. He was disappointed that Bubba wasn't in charge of Salinas, even though Bubba had been handpicked by a top leader in the Bay. Back when Bubba paroled, he arrived in town with written notice of his promotion, but then he was inexplicably brushed aside. Mondo was informed about the new general for the streets, the big homie with some Aztec name. Thanks to the state of extreme paranoia induced by Mueller's arrest, the rules were changing. To keep the cops on their toes, the brass in the Bay was intent on using these Aztec code names and sending their kites out in Nahua, the indigenous language of Mexico. Actually, all the gang leaders in Pelican Bay were digging back to their ethnic roots. The Aryan Brotherhood used Gaelic language and runic codes. The Black Guerrilla family brothers studied Swahili. It was natural for the NF to turn to Nahua for its own secret idiom. There were shakeups in personnel too. With so many trusted soldiers turning out to be informants, regiments were cleaning house. Everyone was under suspicion. It wasn't enough to be worried about sureños trying to shoot you in the back. Now you had to worry about your best friend might turn on you. Bubba was one of the ones on freeze, suspected of talking family business to Sophie Rocha. But shit, who didn't talk to Sophie Rocha? To replace Bubba, the new big homie with the Aztec name had decided to place this kid Suave from East Las Casitas in charge of the Salinas regiment. Mondo had been assigned to Boxer's crew, with no choice in the matter, so the chain of command went from Mondo up to Boxer to Suave to the big homie. Though the others were new to him, Mondo had known Suave since they were youngsters. Physically, Suave resembled his name, not exactly soft, but certainly not hard. His shoulders sloped and he lacked the broad musculature of prison-trained familianos. With neat short hair and eyes that gave the impression he was dreaming of things far away, he looked more like a college student than a gangbanger. Homeboys like to say the fool closed his eyes when he pulled a trigger. Mondo missed the fun times with Bubba, although he did enjoy filling his pockets with Chinatown cash. Selling drugs was way easier than robberies and home invasions. Every night, the customers came, the faithful lined up to take the communion. He thought Boxer was okay, and he liked that other guy, Stalker, well enough too. Stalker was a rising Salinas East Market star who had been groomed by Rico when he was a youngster. The guy earned the nickname because his last name was Ramirez, same as the Night Stalker serial killer. His many half-ink tattoos could most kindly be called work in progress. His body an unfinished canvas graffitied with Night Stalker, Salinas, and various depictions of the beast of sombrero-wearing women. A sketchy rose and thorns adorned his left hand. His face was long and lean like a racehorse, and his mind and body were equally swift and strong. He was smart, quiet, never flashy, the best kind of worker a regiment could want. When that old-timer Bird went back in on a parole violation, Stalker began to assist the big homie, filling them in on what was happening in Salinas, doing background investigations for the gang, like who on the streets was good and who was no good, who might be claiming someone important in the Bay had sent them there. His intelligence gathering was made easier by the fact that he shacked up with Sophie Rocha. Although always under suspicion for talking too much, there was no doubt Sophie was a tremendous asset when she was on your side. Being a female, she was officially an outsider, but she gleaned secrets from other females and always knew whose man was doing what. Of all the men who cycled through Sophie's tumultuous love life, Stalker was a rare one who seemed to be truly in love with her. He met her at a Halloween party and fell right there. She was not the prettiest in the room, but she was funny, full of life, and under her brassy craziness hid a soft heart. Stalker moved into her pad and took over the drug sales with enthusiasm. No one complained about that. Despite the shakeup of the indictments, business in Salinas was rapidly expanding. The crew was supplying sellers in Chinatown and beyond. Boxer and Mondo became the dream team. Working in tandem, Boxer supplied corners in Chinatown and sold ecstasy at the Monterey nightclubs, while Mondo took care of the tortilla factory and the train tracks. The crew functioned like a well-tuned money-making engine. They fronted cash and drugs to youngsters who started new franchises. They were getting good at politics, negotiating a contract with the flashy black pimps from the Central Valley. On weekends, those guys drove up with their hookers, filling the Motel 6 to service farm workers flush with cash. The NF's offer was this: the pimps could do their business in Salinas without paying taxes, but they had to guarantee their women brought drugs only from the NF. The pimps readily agreed, and sales were good. Mondo felt the Salinas crew was laying the groundwork for the NF's statewide expansion and its metamorphosis into a true criminal business organization. But now, out of nowhere, they were in danger of losing their top revenue source, Chinatown, to that fucker Raymond Sanchez. The guy had been selling on the Chinatown side of the tracks for years, but the crew had always left him alone because he paid rent. This didn't make sense to Mondo. People said the man was an NF dropout, which made him the worst sort of traitor. Yet the gang gave him a wink and a pass simply because he was paying them off. It didn't sit well with Mondo, but he held his tongue. Once again, he had an uneasy sense that all the beliefs he'd been taught about the cause were being tossed aside. In any case, that dropout Sanchez wasn't paying rent anymore, which meant no more passes. Mondo stuck close to the tortilla factory, but pressed his fingers against his Glock. The fucker was out there somewhere. Boxer was also eager to deal with Sanchez, purely for business reasons, since the guy was impacting the NF's income. Stalker agreed, but urged them all to be patient. He said he would ask the big homie for the go-ahead to deal with Sanchez. Meanwhile, they had no choice but to hang back and chill. They could not move on the trader without a green light. Mondo stared into the night. Nothing. Only the long, silent tracks and the usual customer shadows.